Live. I'm just getting a confirmation. Okay, it says we're live. Welcome. I'm going to wait 20 seconds and then hopefully someone from our team can telegram me and just confirm that we're live. But I just want to welcome everyone to this call. We are live. Sayer's giving me a thumbs up. I'm so excited about this call. Everyone watching live, everyone watching on the archive and the recorded archive, this call is going to be available for free afterwards. I'm just so glad that you're here. This is what we're about to dive into now is the heart and soul of the Summit 2020. We have 9 of the top leaders on the planet who are bringing forward information about 5G and about solutions and about what's currently happening in the world with regard to 5G, about context and about strategies, legal strategies and otherwise for you to use. Now, the main point of this call is to get you connected at the local level, get you connected not only with these leaders, but also at the local level. So what we've done, I'm just going to do a quick screen share here. Hopefully this is going to work. And I am just going to do, let's see. Okay, so can you guys see my screen?
Yep.
Okay, so loading up here on our new website, so Solutions for Humanity, this is a brand new resource we're just contributing, and again, getting connected locally. So click the 5G Grassroots Connector there, get connected locally. There's more than 300 websites and groups there now that are available to you right now. So you can actually search by country and please make use of that resource and share that resource that is literally like just launched now for the summit. So so thank you for using that, for just make use of that and get connected at the grassroots level. And that's what this is all about. So the other thing I want to say is on the live stream page where you're at right now, if you haven't seen it already, here's the speakers link. So that's how you can get connected with them, get on their email list and be part of their communities. So I'm just going to stop sharing for the moment. And let's see, are there any other points? One other point is, in addition to this live call, you will have free access. Everyone will have free access this coming weekend for free to all 42 original 5G Summit talks, plus the bonus talk that we did with Dr. Rashid Buttar here on the call. That was just a couple weeks ago, and that was a very compelling call. So you'll be getting information about that. And for some of you, actually for many of you, this will be a brand new summit experience. So that free encore weekend starts, I believe, tomorrow afternoon sometime, Friday afternoon sometime, and it's through Sunday night. So please take advantage of that and share the links to the talks. Okay, so we're about 3 minutes past. We're going to do our best to stay on track today, on time. It's going to be very challenging. I'm totally not expecting this call to be right at 90 minutes because there's so much good information, but we're going to give you a snapshot of each speaker, of their latest, most key news and developments, and then again, get connected with them and their organizations following the call. So I just want to welcome my co-host Sayer. Sayer, if you could unmute yourself just for a second and just say hello. Sayer is a lot of the engine behind the scenes of the 5G Summit, and I'm just so glad to be working with him. Sayer, welcome.
Thanks so much, Josh. Thanks everyone who's here. And yeah, it's just so exciting to watch, this event unfold for the second year, because one of the motives was that we were observing the censorship, really ratchet up. And even right before COVID happened, we started to see 5G searches scale in a way that, was really encouraging. And then I just did a Google Trends analysis, and COVID completely just suppressed that. In fact, anyone mentioning, 5G would get suppressed on YouTube and various platforms. So, this is the way that we are able to still stand up for our basic rights, and all these amazing experts that you've gathered, Josh. I can't say enough about their dedication and willingness to speak up, in face of great opposition. And it's been a really remarkable thing to watch. So much positive energy. And again, to you, Josh, the way that you put this together with an actual call to action to give people that ability to make an impact has been really just beautiful. So it's not just a summit, it's taking it to another level, because you're really helping people empower themselves. So thank you. And thank you everyone who's on this right now.
Thank you, Sarah. And you mentioned the call to action. I just want to encourage everyone, as you're watching the Encore talks this weekend, right below each talk, there's a big banner that says take action now. Click that, send that notice to your elected reps at the federal, state, and local level. And we got that working for USA, Canada, and Australia. So it's very important. It's one of the key ways we can engage. So let's just go quickly around the panel here. I'm going to do a very quick introduction and just say hello. So Magda Havas, you are going to be speaking on EMF and immunity on the science today. You've done so much research and pioneering in this work in EMF science and EMF research, just giving it a grounded perspective. So thank you so much for being on the call today. Mandy Jacob is the leader of 5gfree.org. She has more than 100 cities. Is that right, Mandy? You're muted right now. If you want, you can unmute yourself, but you have more than 100 cities, I believe, in the United States that are gathering and taking action. So a brand new website launched in time for this summit. So that we're going to be talking about that resource later, 5gfree.org. Mandy, I'm so glad you're here.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Lena Poo, you have worked with the Empower Movement team, and you've branched off and customized a notice of liability process that you are making available now, correct? And,
yes.
and then we'll talk about that a little bit later. That is an out-of-the-box type approach that is enforcing liability that has been showing a lot of promise. So Mandy's making that available in the 5G matter. Andrew Campanelli, I'm just so looking forward to learn about your methods and your approach. You're a lawyer in New York. You're working with cities all across the country, and you're having a remarkable string of success, right? And working with local governments to help them stand on their rights and preserve, to retain their local siting rights. Do you want to say a word about that just briefly, or should we just save it for your segment?
No, we can save it.
Okay. Thank you. Great. Crystal Tini, am I pronouncing that right?
Yes, you are. Crystal
Okay.
Tini, yes.
Great. You have a large Instagram following, and you've recently woken up to 5G. You've had an experience where you realize it's on your rooftop, and I'm so looking forward to your share about that because it's so timely and relevant. Dr. Rashid Buttar, you and I have been talking a lot the last few weeks, and you're gonna be sharing about a can you tell us just in brief, it's a medical freedom super PAC, is that right?
Right. I'll bring up a little bit about super PAC, and I'm going to talk about the immune aspect too. That's what we deal with, is cancer and the implications of 5G. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that, and then what we're doing with the super PAC. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you. Frank Clegg, you are the former president of Microsoft Canada, and you're the current CEO of Canadians for Safe Technology. We're doing a joint venture with you and part of, in a way, with the 5G Summit, and we're helping people to get subscribed to Citizens or Canadians for Safe Technology. Thank you so much for being here and just for the journey that you and I know your wife have been on in coming to this awareness. And we look forward to hear about your experience and about, helping us, get started in a moment to help us frame this conversation and what is 5G.
Thanks for the invitation, and thanks for your help in getting the message out to Canadians. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. And Derek Brose, you are you're in Houston now, correct? You're back in Houston. Is that, you're muted right now, but you have amazing filmmaker. Your documentary on YouTube, the 5G Trojan Horse, is the best single documentary that I've seen on 5G on the subject. So you're going to be sharing on freedom cells and on how we can get connected in more than just online, but get connected in person and have true sustainability. So thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me, Josh.
And Arthur Furstenberg, we can't see you, you're calling in, but I'm so glad you're with us. You're going to be sharing about the 5G satellite situation, some recent developments. I'm such a fan of your book, The Invisible Rainbow. I think your book, The Invisible Rainbow, and Mercola's book actually have compiled, called EMF'd this year, have compiled so much powerful information that's useful for people. So Arthur, thank you so much for joining us.
Josh, I just want to say that this is a huge thing for me that Arthur Furstenberg is on here, because I love his book, The Invisible Rainbow. So it's a huge happiness for me. It puts a huge smile on my face. So awesome work.
Thanks, Arthur. So let's just dive in now. We're short on time. We're going to give you guys so much compelling information, solutions, strategies, and connections here. So Frank Clegg, let's start with you. You have a few slides, I think 5 slides, and you can just cue me to switch the slides, but we'll start that now. Please go ahead.
Okay. Thanks again, Josh. And again, thank you for the invitation. Now, let's go to the second slide. I've spent my entire career in the technology industry. Let's go to slide 2, Josh, please. And I have seen the tremendous benefits that technology can provide. I've also seen the harm if technology is not implemented correctly. In my opinion, our current implementation of wireless technology is just not safe. That's why I co-founded Canadians for Safe Technology about 7 years ago. And then I joined the Environmental Health Trust as on their business advisory board about 2 years ago. Both organizations work with advocating to government, raising awareness. The thing that's unique about Environmental Health Trust is we also actually carry out and fund research. Next slide. So it's very difficult to try to summarize all the, when you ask me to do this, to summarize all the harm and the science-based health effects. I think the fundamental point to make is there's really 3 points. The first point is there has been absolutely no testing done on 5G technology to show that it's safe for humans and our environment. Second point is that all of our concerns with 2G, 3G, and 4G apply to 5G technology. And so when we have hundreds of peer-reviewed published studies that show direct links to different kinds of cancers. We see damage to sperm and other reproductive harms. We're seeing published papers showing learning and memory deficits. And we're seeing proof of damage to our DNA, to our nervous systems, and to the cells in our bodies. And just to make a point on the cancer, there's international experts now using the National Toxicology Program, which was a $30 million study that was funded by the National Institute of Health, with thousands of rats, thousands of rodents that show, and their highest category is to show clear evidence of harm. And they came back and had 3 different peer reviews during the process and came back with a category that said it is absolutely clear evidence of harm. So taking that information, taking the epidemiological studies that we now have that are current, we have experts now saying that if the International Agency and the Research on Cancer is going to revisit the whole wireless technology sector and all the radiation from them, when they come out, where people are calling for that to be categorized as a category 1, a human carcinogen, which is in the same category as cigarette smoke and asbestos. So again, 5G keeps all of that baggage with it. In addition, what 5G also brings is something that we've never used before in terms of in cellular networks, which are these millimeter waves. And millimeter waves are the same technology that's used, the same frequencies in the US military and Israeli military for crowd control systems. Now, scientists hired by the industry say, well, their powers are different. That may be true, but I'm not sure it's relevant. There's absolutely no studies, there's no information, there's no proof that we're exposed to these millimeter waves at the frequencies that will be needed to share the data 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. There's nothing to show that technology is safe by any stretch of the imagination. The third and final area of concern with 5G is how close it will be to our homes and our schools and where we work. Because of the limitation of the technology, yes, the industry will feature that it is absolutely can carry a lot more information. So think of it as the pipe is significantly larger, so the information, the data can come through. The challenge is because of that, the trade-off is you have to be a lot closer. So we may be used to cell towers that are, a kilometer or a mile away from us. We are seeing instances now, and I believe one of our speakers is going to talk about where these small cell antennas, which are 4G now, but will be upgraded to 5G, are within 20 meters of people's homes and their bedrooms and where they're living, and you'll be exposed to that 24 hours a day. So just to kind of wrap it up, I'm going to keep my comments short, Josh, so we can get to the questions, because you can't do justice to all of this. But anyways, don't take my word for it. There's scientists around the world that have talked about, that have written formal appeals. So these are individuals who have written or published over 2,000 studies about non-ionizing radiation and its effect on peer-reviewed literature. So these are people who put their reputations on the line and signed a formal appeal to the United Nations and the member states. Now, final slide, what I get asked is say, okay, given all the environment, given my experience in the industry, given all the work that we're doing, what's realistic? What can we do? I'll make two just very high level points. Industry will continue to rely on government safety guidelines, and you are not seeing industry say the technology is safe. What the industry says is we meet federal guidelines, full stop. So until there's a significant behavior, what I'm saying to people is, and nobody likes to hear this, if you don't want a 5G antenna near your house or your work or your school, stop downloading videos in the online, in a wireless environment. If you want to use a video, go to a wired connection, download it, and then view it offline. Second thing is with COVID, and as you mentioned before, all the distractions of not distractions, but the priority that people are putting on COVID, it's taking away from anything else being a priority, with not only in the media, but in terms of our elected officials. Until our elected officials feel that there is a significant risk to them being elected in this upcoming elections in November or other local elections, they will not accept and do anything about this. So our job and our requirement is to make them understand that this is a concern we have, this is something we are very worried about, and this is something we expect them as our elected officials to do something about. Thank you.
Frank, thank you so much for that. I look forward to the question and answer session with you, as you have a lot to say strategically. Just a quick note to everyone out there, the second part of the call, after we go through each speaker's presentation, is going to be open for discussion and for questions. Obviously, there's hundreds of comments on the live stream page. If you're there making a comment, you can do it on the YouTube stream if you're there, but it's better to make it on the live stream page. And after this call, we'll try to answer as many of those as possible, but we will get to a few questions in the second half of this call. So Frank provided an excellent overview. Now we want to kind of dive into a personal on the ground experience. And Crystal, you, there, you're unmuted. Okay, so you had, did I just mute you when you unmuted? I guess so.
I guess, yeah.
All right, so you tell us about your experience in coming into awareness with 5G and your perspective on this.
I started researching it for a while, within the last year and a half, and just well aware of everything surrounding that. And since there was a quarantine, I flew back to Philadelphia to be with my family for a while, and then came back to my Los Angeles home. And I live in an apartment structure. And within, I'd say 3 nights, I was woken up out of a sound sleep several nights in a row, and I thought it was just jet lag or something like that. And so I just kind of, put it off as that. Then started heart palpitations. Then I had a deep burning sensation in my chest. Then I felt tapping in my chest late at night. In the morning, I woke up extremely nauseous every single day. So I had headaches and I have all these different symptoms. And since I'd been researching this for so long, I'm like, this is not right. And knowing while the whole quarantine was happening, 5G was being rolled out everywhere. I didn't expect it to be so close to my home. And since I am into yoga, you're not really supposed to go on the rooftop of our building, but I'm always up there and I shoot yoga videos and things like that. So I know what's up there. So one of the nights I woke up and I heard a very, very high pitched frequency type of sound. And that kind of set off an alarm. And I said, I know that it's around here somewhere. And since posting so much about it on social media and just discussing with other people, I just knew it had to be around. So I went up on the roof and surely enough, there was, a small lamp. I guess it stood about 6 feet tall. And I took pictures of it and everything else. And surely it's a 60 gigahertz 5G lamp that's up there. And it's literally directly above my bedroom. So yeah, there it is there. So I was really freaked out by it. And I started looking up a million different things and found the In Power movement. And then that led me to you, Josh, and has me really interested in the notice of liability and getting the right forms and documents to people. And so after I had this experience, before I get there, I would leave my apartment. I hadn't spent any time in there. I would leave the apartment all day because once I was in there, I was nauseous and had all those symptoms. But upon leaving my apartment, within an hour or two, my symptoms subsided. I would still have the deep burning in the chest. Then I developed the dry cough. So all these things that were very similar also to symptoms of COVID-19 with, here and there of differences. But once I would leave, they would subside. If I would go back in the apartment, they came back. So I stopped sleeping in there. I ordered an EMF reader, the whole 9 yards. And it was a very scary experience because I had trouble breathing a lot of the time. And so I did find a notice of liability. So I got that process started, but then also found you. And that notice of liability was only a 4-page document, whereas you guys have something much more extensive that I want to get into. But as I was saying, now that I have a really large social media following, I am sharing this information to people, and which is why I'm so happy to be here with you guys today to get information from the experts and to be able to share and pass that along. So that's what my experience was. And I had left my apartment 4 days ago. I am now in Texas, and my symptoms have literally disappeared, and it's very strange to say the least. So that's my
thank you.
story. Yeah.
I've been, okay, everyone out there watching this, I've been putting the call out sort of quietly, kind of getting louder about it. We really need 60 gigahertz testing equipment, economical 60 gigahertz testing equipment to come to the forefront so that we can use it, so that we can figure out and correlate symptoms with exposures, with frequencies. Right now, maybe we can just have a brief discussion on if anyone has a specific point on this, the 60 gigahertz frequency and technology, and how key it is. Because right now it's, what is it, $30,000 or $50,000 for anything that is able to tell if there's 60 gigahertz transmission. Is there anyone that just briefly wants to touch on that? Because what Crystal said and showed is that that's a 5 gigahertz plus 60 gigahertz emitter, and that's going up on her rooftop. And so that's we can assume that it's quite ubiquitous, but there's been no disclosures from industry on exactly what's going up where, or if it's in hospitals or if it's in elderly care facilities. We know that Y gig is associated with 60 gig. So does anyone want to touch on that just really quick? Magda, please.
Well, the 60 gigahertz is going to be a free frequency, so it's going to be ultimately everywhere. And one of the things that we've recognized is that 60 hertz actually is absorbed by oxygen. And there have been some claims made that this could actually interfere with the ability of your blood to reversibly bind with oxygen. And that particular point, I've tried to have it verified and I haven't been able to. But the fact that 60 gigahertz is absorbed by oxygen is very important, because that will change properties of the oxygen by changing the rotation or the vibration. And that could ultimately have consequences to respiration.
Thank you, Magda. So you're next up on our list. So good timing for that. Please share with us the research. Now you've done a dive into research specifically on EMF and immune system effects. So that's very obviously is very, very key right now. We need to separate fact from fiction. Please tell us what the science says.
Well, there's a lot of evidence that electrosmog actually produces stress in the body. It interferes with the immune system, and it prevents your body from healing, which ultimately leads to chronic illness that's so prevalent in our society right now. And just a few examples of how that happens. We have evidence that it interferes with sleep. We know that a lot of healing takes place while you're sleeping. And so if you're not going to get a restful night's sleep, your body's not going to recover, and ultimately it'll continue to deteriorate. We have evidence that this radiation affects the blood. The blood in some people goes into something called rouleau formation, which is the blood cells sticking together in what looks like a stack of coins. And when this happens, the oxygen content in the cells goes down, and this actually benefits bacteria that are anoxic and prefer a lower oxygen concentration. And it means that waste products in the blood are also going to increase, things like lactic acid. And we know the pH affects bacteria as well. So we're creating an environment in our body that's going to be beneficial to harmful bacteria. Talking about bacteria, there's evidence that there's antibacterial resistance developing when certain frequencies are used against bacteria. And if that happens, then we're going to be in even worse trouble with not being able to use the antibiotics we have. A lot of people, just like Crystal, complains about heart palpitations and pain and pressure in the heart or in the chest area. And very often they associate it with a heart attack. They think they're having a heart attack. And what they're actually having is an anxiety attack. So it's upregulating the sympathetic nervous system, downregulating the parasympathetic nervous system. And when this happens, your body is unable to heal. It's simply taking all of the energy and putting it into your muscles so that you can, fight the saber-toothed tiger. So this is another critical way of how it prevents healing. We have evidence that there's oxidative stress generated by non-ionizing radiation. And what's really interesting is that the RNA viral infections also produce oxidative stress. And this enables them to replicate much more quickly. So here we have another example of electrosmog producing an environment that's favorable to viral infections. We have evidence of localized stress response from things like heat shock proteins. And basically what the research is showing, if you're initially exposed to some form of stress and your body generates heat shock proteins, which then instigate the entire immune system response. However, if you're exposed for long periods of time, it begins to interfere with that process. So the heat shock proteins no longer have the beneficial effect on the rest of the immune system. Animal studies are showing that short-term exposure to electrosmog or to any kind of stress is actually quite good. It stimulates the immune system, but long-term exposure interferes with the immune system. And so it's really bad for anything to do with long-term survival. And we know that Dr. Martin Pall has talked about voltage-gated calcium channels and how this increases the calcium content in cells, for example. And it turns out the viral infections do exactly the same thing. And when the calcium content goes up, it actually promotes the replication of viruses. And finally, we have evidence from Dr. Ole Johansson quite a few years ago showing something called screen dermatitis, where people who are exposed to electromagnetic energy develop a rash or itching, redness of the skin. And this is due to an increase in mast cells that are producing histamines. And while it's very uncomfortable if it happens on the skin, if it's going to stimulate, if the radio frequency stimulates mast cells in the stomach, it's going to cause nausea, digestive problems. If it affects the heart, it's going to affect blood pressure and heart rate, can lead to fainting, for example. And it affects the lungs, then it's going to interfere with our ability to breathe and causes wheezing, just like we have in asthmatics. So basically, the bottom line is that electrosmog causes stress, prevents our body to heal, and impairs the immune system, making us much more vulnerable to any kind of biological invasion.
Magda, thank you so much for that. Really quickly, what is your scientific-based perspective or opinion on the role of 5G and related EMF frequencies and the current virus situation on the planet for the last number of months? Like this, we're not making a specific claim or stating a specific truth 100%. We are openly and responsibly investigating and discussing this. YouTube censors. So Magda, tell us your science-based opinion on that.
Okay, well, I have two opinions about that. One is that just knowing that all forms of electromagnetic energy that are non-ionizing will ultimately weaken the body and make it much more susceptible to infection. So that's a blanket statement that I think fits properly in the discussion. We actually did a very small study looking at the rollout of 5G millimeter waves in the United States and compared it to the number of COVID-19 cases and the number of COVID-19 deaths that were attributed to COVID-19. And we found when we compared the states with and without 5G millimeter waves, that there was almost a doubling of the cases per population. So we've standardized it for population. And there was an even higher increase in the number of deaths. So having millimeter waves in your community associated with 5G was responsible or correlated with having more cases per population and having more deaths per population.
Okay, now I want to jump in on. You said correlated. Now, could it be that it's circumstantial or coincidence that I guess the 5G tends to go in the larger cities, right? And the smaller cities haven't got it yet, in the towns, so forth. And also the larger cities, people are closer together, and there's more transmissibility there. And the predominant but questionable virus model. Could it be that it's just kind of coincidence that 5G is going in where there, as you say, more COVID attributed deaths?
It could be that it's associated with density, although we standardize for density. It could be associated with pollution. So the more people there are, usually the more pollution there is. And if you're dealing with a respiratory problem, air pollution is really critical. But other people have done the same thing, looking at country to country comparisons and community to community comparisons. And it seems to stand up. And I can't believe that in all of those cases, we're having higher pollution levels. And then that's what's attributing to the increase in correlation.
Good. Magda, thank you so much. Looking forward to the question panel with you too. You bring so much to this conversation. I appreciate you presenting today. All right, so Arthur Furstenberg, welcome and thank you for being on here. Author of The Invisible Rainbow, as we mentioned. Arthur, please tell us, in your perspective, your very, very well-researched perspective, what is the latest with the 5G satellite situation and anything else that is most critical at this time that we know?
Well, yeah, there's a lot that I could convey. I'll just try and summarize a bunch of it. The main alarm that I have, most immediate threat to our planet, is what SpaceX is doing, and they're calling their satellite constellation Starlink. And in my opinion, if we do not stop the satellites, we won't have to worry about 5G on the ground because we will not be alive. And I would say we have about 3 months to stop this. And very few people are paying attention. SpaceX has 420 satellites in the sky right now. Actually, I think they may have just increased it to 480. Anyway, yes, they did just increase it to 480, but on April 22nd, they brought their number up to 420. They're launching 60 satellites at a time. Mm-hmm. And shortly after April 22nd, I began to receive emails and phone calls from around the world from people who were suddenly having heart palpitations. Many of them began exactly April 22nd, April 23rd. Mm. And so I put out in my latest newsletter a request to hear from people. This was the next to last newsletter, request to hear from people who have had heart palpitations since April 22nd. And I was flooded with emails from far and wide, actually mostly from the United States and Canada and Europe. Didn't get them from South America. Got one from Russia, got one from Australia, but mostly Canada, United States, and Europe, all over Europe, practically every country. People who suddenly thought they were having heart attacks, people who went to the doctor and were told they had a stroke. I mean, this is serious. Now, put this in context. The only satellites in the ionosphere, all these satellites are in the ionosphere, the only satellites in the ionosphere to date that are operating and providing cell phone service worldwide are Iridium with 66 satellites and Globalstar with 48 satellites. And I've been monitoring the effects of these on electrically sensitive people all over the world since that started. September 23rd, 1998, when Iridium first went into limited service, people all over the planet thought they were going to die, including me. The same thing happened after they went bankrupt and were brought back and were rescued by the U.S. military. When they went back on, same thing. When Globalstar came on with its 48 satellites, same thing. When Orbcomm came on with its, I think, 28 satellites, there was reports of widespread illness. We're talking about now 420, in 3 months, 840 satellites where they want to begin serious testing with thousands of new customers all over the world, and 60 satellites being launched at a time every 2 weeks for the foreseeable future until they have 4,408 satellites up there, and they've just applied for an additional 30,000 satellites. So the entire fleet is supposed to be 34,408 satellites, and this will be capable of serving, by my calculations, up to 150 million customers on the internet at the same time. Billions of frequencies modulated at millimeter wave frequencies from space, modulated at ELF and VLF frequencies. This will, long story short, they are in the ionosphere. The ionosphere controls the global electrical circuit. The global electrical circuit provides the energy for life in the biosphere. The global electrical circuit enters at the tops of our heads from the sky, communicates with the earth through the soles of our feet. This is called prana in Ayurvedic medicine. It is called chi in Oriental medicine. This is what, it's not just air and water and food that keeps us alive. It's the global circuit, which is now going to be polluted with dirty electricity. You're not going to be able to be living just in a house with dirty electricity now. It's going to be in your body directly from the sky, from all these satellites. And this is more than very worrisome. If people all over the planet do not collaborate together in large numbers to try and stop this, what we're doing to stop 5G on the ground doesn't matter. One of the things I'm putting out is the CEO of this effort is Elon Musk. His brother, Kimball Musk, lives in Boulder, Colorado. Elon lives in a gated community in California. Kimball lives in an ordinary house. It's a big house, a fancy house, but you can go and knock on his door if you know him or live there. And the rest of his family are all environmentalists, including Kimball and their half-sister, who also lives in Denver. So I'm reaching out and putting out the word. If anybody knows how to get in touch with these people, call them up. Tell them, if you're familiar enough with the issues, talk to them. If you're not, connect them with me if you can. I could go into a heck of a lot more, but we're limited in time, and it's a global emergency. It's an ionospheric emergency. They're digitalizing the biosphere. We are going to shortly be living inside of a high-speed computer. And
so
how kill us.
So strategically, obviously that's a big download there for a lot of people. Strategically, Arthur, you mentioned reaching Elon Musk, and basically just appealing to him
and the people on his board of directors and his investors. And I have a whole list of people that we could reach out to, potentially ways to get his uncle is a prestigious doctor in Canada. There are a lot of people that could get to him if anybody knows any of these folks. Right,
and it's an extremely, extraordinarily frustrating situation, isn't it? Because as we know now, corporations, the telecom industry has taken over the FCC a long time ago, and the corporate interests are running things and using governments.
I'm not concerned with who's running what. I'm concerned with us all getting together on this planet and uniting to save our lives and to save the animals and plants and whales in the ocean and everybody.
Exactly.
It's no longer us and them. There's not an enemy out there trying to do this. There's nobody to give notices of liability to. We're all in this sinking boat together.
Right. Thank you for that perspective. I appreciate that. Yeah, we are all in this together. So that's a good reminder at times. Okay. So Arthur, any other key points for this? As you've been talking, I've been scrolling down here, and just to kind of highlight what I'm showing here for the next minute or so, kind of as we continue talking with you, Arthur, is your update from about a week and a half ago.
There's one other thing I want to add.
Go ahead.
Yes, there's dozens on there. That there were many more than that I got from around the world. Those were the ones that were most quote worthy, but many more than that. back in 1998, 99, 2000, 2001, when these first satellites were going up there, it also had effects on birds. That went September 23rd, 1998, and for 3 weeks afterwards, homing pigeons got lost by the thousands in homing pigeon races. In the United States, it was homing pigeon racing season. When Iridium came out of bankruptcy, it was foaling season for racehorses, and there was an epidemic of abortions and foal deaths in very expensive racehorses, and that made the newspapers. And I seem to be the only person that monitored that back then, and I'm keeping track of it now, and it's consistent with what happened back then, except we're going to have 500 times as many satellites now as we did then and as we have up till now. If we don't work together to stop this.
Yeah, this is absolutely critical. So please get connected in a local group, get connected, follow Arthur's updates and share. Let's have some organic, creative brainstorming and come together, because as Arthur says, we're all in this together at this point.
Yeah. And I'm looking for ideas. I'm looking for assistance. I've been working against electrosmog since 1995, for 25 years. I've been studying the issue for 40 years, ever since I was injured while I was in medical school in 1980. And it's been very frustrating. I took over from a previous generation that included Ross Adey and Neil Cherry and Robert Becker, and Alan Frey is one of the people who's still alive and with us. But Paul Brodeur, who wrote about it for the New Yorker, and they all got discouraged and handed it over to the new generation, and now I'm the old generation, and it's just it's reached a point that we cannot put up with anymore.
Yeah, Arthur, thank you so much for joining us today, for your critical work for the planet, serving humanity. And so everyone, please go follow Arthur's work there. There's links you've seen on the screen and below. And
Josh,
check out his book, Invisible Rainbow. Please, Dr. Buttar, go ahead.
I was just going to ask you, can I ask Dr. Furstenberg a quick question, and also check your email, Josh?
Well, can we, let's do this in the second half, please, Dr. Buttar, because that's going to be the discussion panel. We want to get through the...
It's a quick question. It's going to be yes or no. I just want to know
go ahead.
In your opinion, Dr. Furstenberg, is Elon Musk aware or not aware?
Oh, could you ask that again? I didn't hear.
The issue with SpaceX and all the stuff that's going on, are you saying that if we reach him, that you don't think that he's actually aware of the consequences?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
He doesn't know. He doesn't know he's gonna cause mass extinction on the planet. He's on the planet. If he thought that, if his brother thought that, his brother is putting in learning gardens for children all over the country in schools. They're concerned. His brother's wife, Christiana, goes to sustainability conferences every year. There's one I think just happened now in California. His half-sister studied environmental science at the University of Colorado in Boulder. I mean, these are people that care about the planet. I don't know about Elon Musk himself, but he is surrounded by people who care about the planet.
Okay, let's talk more about that in the second half. Thank you, Arthur, for that segment. Now, obviously, that opens up the strategy option for a mass informational campaign to Elon and his associates, obviously, and there's other strategies that we could see that we're going to get into on this call, and other people in the movement have. So let's go to Andrew J. Campanelli. Andrew, thank you so much for being on this call, and your work for how many years? You've been fighting and stopping cell phone towers from going in. Your website's anti-cell phone tower lawyer. Tell us about your website, and please share about your work. Thank you.
I have an older website called anticelltowerlawyers.com, but Campanelli PC is my main website.
Okay.
Yeah, look, my work is on the ground. I've been a litigation attorney for 27 years. I've been handling cell tower litigation for 20 years. I am literally on the front line of the 5G rollout from the perspective of homeowners and civic associations and local governments. I've handled these cases across the entire United States. Every day my phone rings and someone is upset because as Mr. Clegg had mentioned, with the 5G rollout, they're looking to put facilities in much closer proximity to people's homes. Typically, it's involving, every day I'll get a call for somebody seeking to install a small cell or a DOS node as close as 20 feet to someone's child's bedroom window. And this is going on all across the country. In fact, as we speak, the major players in the wireless industry are looking to install hundreds of thousands of these things. So I handle these cases every single day. Every single day I kill an application, someone will call me and say, I need to stop a cell tower from being installed next to my house, or a small cell or a DOS system. And basically I come in and I do what I need to do and defeat the applications and prevent the single installations. Of greater import, now people are calling on me to enlighten their local governments and to dispel misinformation, because misinformation is one of the wireless industry's greatest tools at this juncture. In connection with the 5G rollout, they are more than ever before trying to mislead local governments to believe that under the Federal Telecommunications Act of 1996, local governments no longer have the power to regulate the placement of wireless facilities. That's completely false. So individuals and groups and even municipalities are hiring me to do municipal ordinance review. So I look at their ordinances and then I recommend changes which, number one, give the local governments the maximum power to control the placement of wireless facilities. And number two, make sure that when they render zoning decisions to deny an application to install a wireless facility, they do so in a manner which avoids any potential violations of the Telecommunications Act of 1996. So number one, the decision stands up, and number two, they can't get sued. And then finally, I also give them assistance in enacting regulations to protect their citizenry from, quite frankly, exposure to illegally excessive levels of RF radiation. Unfortunately, what the vast majority of the country doesn't know is that with respect to the 5G rollout, virtually all of the wireless facilities are essentially unregulated. And what I mean by that is when they're built, the FCC has no idea where they are and has no idea what level of RF radiation they're emitting. And that's because any facility under 199 feet doesn't have to be registered with the FCC. And with regard to RF radiation they're exposing people to, the FCC, unless it receives a complaint, they never test the facilities and never requires the owners to test them. Now, in my world, every day, Crystal, your story was interesting because I get calls from people like you all day long, every day. You're not alone. This happens all the time. Very often they bring me in to get the facility moved or to stop it from going in the first place. And fortunately, I prevail about 70 to 80% of the time. So that's a good thing. But there are people now who want to bring claims for damages for nuisance. People who have sensitivity want to file claims under the ADA and the FHAA to demand reasonable accommodations to move these facilities to a sufficient distance so that the RF radiation won't adversely impact their ability to enjoy the quiet use and enjoyment of their home. And so we're working on that as well. So we're very busy. Now, I'm not a scientist. I don't know the medicine. I'm not even an activist. I'm just a lawyer. But I can tell you this. Not a week goes by when someone doesn't call me and tell me about the adverse impacts that they've sustained by exposure to RF radiation. The most heartbreaking cases of all are perhaps every 3 months when some 26-year-old kid calls me and says he's been working on cell towers for 2 years and he has lymph node cancer and he's terminal. So I have my own personal beliefs about the science and the effect of even non-ionizing radiation on the human body, but I'm not a scientist. I'm not a doctor. I leave that to the experts. But if someone wants to fight the installation of a cell tower, or someone wants their local government to know the power they have to stop the placement of a facility and to stop it, then I help people do that all day long.
Andrew, that's powerful. Thank you so much for your work and for that concise summary of it. So you and I are going to meet next week. You're going to do a presentation for the 2020 Solutions to 5G course. That's an optional module as part of this summit, 2020 Solutions to 5G. Andrew's a last minute addition to that as a presenter to that course. And so we're going to have a chance to go deeper in that. I want to get to exactly, I want to get as much information out of you that doesn't cost, me money to hire you basically. But what could you share with us now? Maybe take another minute or two if you could. What are the most key, if you could put some more focus on the most key lies or misunderstandings that local government officials are under?
Well, local government officials are being misled to believe that, let me back up. When the telecommunications was enacted by Congress back in 1996, they actually considered giving the FCC the power to regulate the placement of these things. At the end of the day, they ultimately did just the opposite. The main provision of the Telecommunications Act of 1996 specifically preserved the power to regulate the placement of wireless facilities to local governments. Now, the wireless industry doesn't like that, and they've been trying to change it for 24 years, but they couldn't get Congress to do it. So instead, they've been getting these interpretive orders from the FCC which the site developers, not wireless carriers, but site developers, are now going to local governments with and saying, see, you can't stop us anymore. And unfortunately, local governments don't know. And quite frankly, their attorneys representing local governments don't know either. And so every day somebody calls me up and says, look, the town attorney told me our hands are tied by the FCC. There's nothing we can do. And that is absolutely false. It is the biggest, and they're rolling out, putting in hundreds of thousands of these things because their local government doesn't know they have the power to stop them.
Wow, that's such crucial information. Thank you for that. And I want to continue this even past the course. Like, let's see how we can continue to educate local governments, educate communities, educate local governments, and then connect the two. Andrew Campanelli, thanks so much for being on the panel today.
My pleasure.
Good. So next, let's go to Miss Mandy Jacob. Mandy is the leader of United Issues Reform, and her new website is 5gfree.org. Mandy is going to share with us about some local successes at the local level across the country. And I'm sure that's going to be accelerated even more by, you know, this information that's coming out that Andrew and others are coming out and bringing out in real time here. So Mandy, let us know about your organization, your brand new website, and about the successes people are having and the cities across the country that you're working with.
Okay, thanks, Josh. But before I start, I really have to say I'm even honored to be on this panel. Every one of you is a hero. And thank you for uniting us, because this is what it's about. We're up against a megalith, that's an organization, and our organization is different. We're not an organization. We're just people on the ground, on the land, trying to find solutions. And people say we're activists. I hate that word. I came from corporate banking. My father would turn in his grave to hear that. So I call us solutionists. And I'm so excited to back up after Andrew, because Andrew, we fit together like a hand and glove. He won't tell you, but yeah, his success rate is 80% plus. So what do? We're here to offer you solutions. We're here to offer you help, love. Often when the people come, the people who I say are awake, I say, welcome to the tribe, because that's exactly what it is. We've got the solutions. I've just finished a booklet now of over 18 different strategies that you can wind together in an exponential format. Some of the cities I'll tell you about, some I can't mention their names because they are in the middle of the process. Absolutely, Andrew's first comment was the Wireless Ordinance. Within that, we can talk about an hour of the different ordinances that you can go into in terms of setbacks and health of the residents. And don't listen to your city council when they say they can't speak about the health of the residents. If you talk about tracking where the money flows, our three richest cities in the US, which is Ojai, Malibu, Beverly Hills, they all protect the health of their residents, and it's written in the ordinance. The other thing that we love to talk about is third-party reinsurance. Not one single telecom has third-party reinsurance, because the reinsurers around the world, the biggest one being Swiss Re, will tell you that they will not reinsure because they know this is the health effects. It's the next asbestos and smoking bubble. So those are a few ways. We've got cities like Westlake Village, where they didn't even put in a requirement in their ordinance for third-party reinsurance. They just wanted reinsurance of 2 million per pole. And the city literally took them 2 lines to write. The city councilman said he didn't have time, give me 2 lines. That's what we wrote. And they have 1 tower in the entire city. And people often say, you know, well, I'm only one person. My favorite story is down in San Clemente. We had a young mom of 3 kids under the age of 5. She single-handedly saved the entire city by just reaching out to a city planner and councillor, and did a 500-foot setback from schools and residential areas. It's a 17 square mile radius. So she's a hero right there. And so we concentrate on the cities. Go to our website there. You know, the ones we've published are up. You can go anything. The big one is ADA. I still claim, if there's people who are trying to get any relief, my city in particular, we've got 13 ADA requests. That's why we're safe, because our city knows as soon as one of those towers go up, they're going to be bankrupt, because that is backed by the US Access Board, which in turn you can go all the way to the DOJ through the HUD. So they're really, I could go on and on, but I also want to talk about schools, because at the beginning of this year, we were confident enough with our city councils, because we have litigators like Andrew and a handful of others that will fight for you. But then we decided to go to the schools because we thought, how can you put these children in this environment? We had no idea that COVID would happen. And as soon as COVID happened, there was talk about the 5G rollout on top of school buildings. So we kept putting out to our solutionists, give us a signature. We got a signature in Illinois where the principal signed that there was going to be a 5G rollout on the school. So what did we do? We've created an entire package. So parents, every single parent that's out there, you need to get our package. It starts off with a FOIA, a cease and desist, a notice of demand, and finally a non-consent form. The notice of demand is the most important because it's actually in most of the state constitutions, when you're removing your child from a parental rights into a public school system, they are held to a higher accountable level. And most of those employees can go to jail for 6 years. So that's in our contract. Our non-consent, we actually demand their indemnity insurance. We list all the effects from ADHD, ADD, heart palpitations, whatever, and we will claim that if the child has any of those. So those are a few things, and that's been launched in 3 states. We've moved towers away from schools. It's often as easy as looking at the ordinance and seeing the setback from the school. So there's a lot we can do. I'm just here to offer you hope. We handhold, we coach, and at the end we cheerlead. And that's all that we're about. So you want to connect with us. There are ways to do this, and we're more than happy to get to get your help. And then finally, the website is the way of connecting, because it doesn't only go down from state to city, but there are action items on there. We are the first organization I know of where we're actually mapping the cancer clusters through our, I mean, sad to say, but it's true. There's no scientific, analysis for it yet. So we've got the cancer clusters, and, 90% of the people around those facilities have cancer. We've got a petition up about RF diapers, believe it or not. So there's so much you can do. You can sit behind your computer and send off, moratorium, cease and desist. This is a secure, uncensored website. I put up a thing on my Facebook group about in communist China, how the people are burning down the 5G towers, and I was frozen off for 3 days. It felt like 3 years. And this is why we've got the website. So just excited to connect with everyone. There is hope and there are solutions.
Mandy, that's great. Thank you so much for your work. Just really quickly, I'm a strong supporter of your organization. And what do you most need on an organizational level, just really quickly right now, because you're doing so much work, yourself, and we want to bring in key people who are inspired, who maybe are watching this right now and you're like, I want to contribute. I have these skills. I have administration. I can outreach. So Mandy, please give us 30 seconds on what you most need. And you just launched a funding campaign on your website, right? I actually just did a donation this afternoon, so please
I just saw that.
Make a donation to Mandy, please, guys. She's doing amazing work. Mandy, what do you need?
Well, Josh, we just need to clone you. Can I have 1,000 of you? Because you've given us this platform, and sorry, I am embarrassed that you funded us, but yes, we need skill set. We need absolutely anything. I mean, people come to us and say, I can't do anything. And then I say, well, do you have a child? Because if you have a child, we can go to your school and we can talk. And we got our first commitment of a school to go Wi-Fi free before COVID. So, we need anything, whatever you can do. And, of course, if you can't give us your time, yes, please donate to us financially, 100% funded. And I can't tell you, there are a handful of us doing this. So thank you.
So basically on the main page there's a donate button. You click that, you can donate one time or, and there's too many people accessing your site right now. So it says,
oh, wow, that's a great
hosting.
sign.
Anyway.
What a blessing. Thank you so much for having me on, and looking forward to working with you, Arthur. We were happy with the city councils and getting over the schools. So I want to jump in with you as well.
Thank you, yes.
Excellent. Thank you, Mandy. Thank you, Arthur. Okay, moving on here. Let's go to Lena Poo. Lena, where are you on my screen here? Let's go. Unmute yourself. There you go. Please share with us. Now, you're going to talk about specific liability action, specific liability-based solution that is different than what Arthur talks about. It's different than what Andrew talks about, but we are exploring all avenues at this point, and there's a number of people that deeply resonate with your approach and the approach of the Empower movement. Not everybody does, and that's okay. But tell us, please, give us an overview of what you do, of your piece, and how people can participate. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Josh, for having me here. This is a great forum. I'm thrilled to be sharing what I've experienced. My whole background really has led me to this notice of liability process. And it wasn't until the Empower movement happened, I believe it's back in 2016, 2017, when they unleashed this whole idea of taking back your power. It resonated deeply with me, because by then I had already gone through everything you can think of. And as Mandy has stated, we're not activists, we're solutionists. And when I started humbly with Wi-Fi in schools, educating all the leaders, nobody felt they had the power. Nobody felt they could bring the train back. They all say it's left the station. And when I started doing my research, I realized, this is determined at the federal level. And then later on, it's more a global level. And when you expand what's happening within Wi-Fi in schools, you realize this agenda is actually all across the board with smart meters. And now, of course, it's with 4G, 5G, rollout 6G, the whole shebang. Basically, our regulatory agencies have basically said, yeah, we're unleashing everything now onto this planet with no regulatory, no environmental oversight. So do I agree that these globalists, these leaders at the very, very top know what they're doing? Absolutely. Because based on my research, historical research and connections to the clandestine operations that has been happening all along since the early 1900s, I guarantee you they know what's going on. So this is why I feel this process is a very universal application, and I believe it's going to attract your international audience. This method, this notice of liability, is a contract. It's a conditional acceptance contract. It's a legal document, but it is handled in such a way that you can be very creative with it, because all unrebutted affidavits stand as truth. Okay, so what I've done, and I've been working on this document for 2.5 years now, and I finally felt, well, it's also the timeline. I mean, it's just, as Arthur's saying, all the satellites going up in space, I felt responsible that I've been working on this document for so long, it is time, it's got to get out there. Mm-hmm. And so this is why I've actually unleashed the document about 2.5 months ago. And I've already started the process with an amazing group of individuals who are the most courageous people on this planet, who've stepped out of their comfort zone. And we're talking about people who have no understanding of laws or the legal system, or even necessarily the science, but all they understand is that they need to reclaim their power. Something is telling them that this document is their voice. Mm-hmm. And that's really all they need. You don't need to be an expert in science or law or even policy to exercise the use of this document. This document is a tool. Okay, and this document represents a process. And this process is reclaiming your sovereign rights, mm-hmm. your inheritance on this earth. So what I fashioned with this document is it reaches at the very, very top level of the agenda. Where's the agenda starting from? Is starting at the UN, United Nations. Okay, so from the United Nations, then all the regulatory agencies fall under that, and then the technology. So the process of this document isn't aimed at the technology per se, it's aimed at the regulatory agencies. So that's one of the secret sauce that I've embedded in this document, is that it doesn't talk about the science by itself. It doesn't talk about the regulatory agencies by itself. It actually talks about the intention behind the agencies. That's the power behind this.
Yeah. So it's basically and I'm just showing on your, is there anything else you want to quickly show on your website here? Do you want to look at the document really quick or?
So I'm putting out the declassified military research. I've actually done the 60 gigahertz research of the science.
Oh, you have?
If people aren't aware, actually, I was the one that made that connection with the Arlington school. I was the one that did the research because I did a blood study back in 2016 of a school teacher in school, and I actually did an RF analysis in conjunction with the sticky blood phenomenon. And it was beyond Rouleau. The blood was so coagulated, it looked like flesh. And this was a teacher that I did with just Wi-Fi. This had nothing to do with 6G or 5G or 4G. This was just the Wi-Fi technology. And I know this because I have the RF to prove it. I have the RF graph to show the levels that she was exposed to was actually extremely low compared to what we're being exposed to now. So the reason why I need to get this science out is because this whole COVID phenomenon, there's a synergistic effect that's going on with the science, the blood coagulating effects with the inability to breathe, the inability to bring in the oxygen is beyond the 60 gigahertz. I don't believe you necessarily need to be exposed to 60 gigahertz to have that inability to absorb the oxygen. It's also all the other wireless. We are bathed in an electromagnetic mess of waves, all different kinds, from low, mid to high band, including the millimeter waves of all different frequencies beyond the 60 gigahertz that is coagulating our blood. And this is the study I'm halfway through. I'm hoping to release it by this month, if not July, because again, time is of the essence. And again, I'm working, like nonstop. And plus I've got the 60 gigahertz connection with the school and all the symptoms. I got to put that out there too, because I do have the science to back it up. The reason why, my stuff isn't out there is I do research, I'm not a YouTube personality. So if other people can help promote, my work, that would be most excellent.
Excellent. Thank you for that, Lena, and thank you for your work. And so just to confirm, like people can go to your main page and sign up either as, let's just have a quick look here. So main page, and then they can go to your Patreon and become a member and do the process, or they can sign up here for information and they will get that research when it's done.
Yes.
In or around July, right? So please be in touch with me. And I would, I don't know if you and Magda could work together, but that would be amazing if so. But Lena, thank you so much for your time today and coming on. Really powerful stuff. And next is Derek Bros, my brother. Thank you so much for being on. You're going to talk about freedom cells. Now, this process isn't just like, it's so multi-dimensional what's happening right now. I mean, you and I have been in touch a lot, even in the past few days, about like trying to figure out how the different pieces and the different levels of what's happening on the planet fit together. How does 5G fit in and so forth? But tell us about freedom cells, tell us about true sustainability, and tell us about that area of your passion for helping people connect and getting real and, navigating whatever happens in our reality going forward.
Yeah, thanks, Josh, and thanks to everybody else for all the wealth of information you're sharing. So I'll explain freedom cells first, and then we'll get into how it relates to 5G. But so freedom cells, there's a website, freedomcells.org, CELLS, like the cells in our body. And the short version of it is basically just the way that each of the cells in our body operate independently as their own kind of system. They're also part of the larger system, the larger whole of our body collectively working together. And so what we call for is for people to create freedom cells, or some people call them hubs or hives or circles. Really the name is kind of irrelevant. It's just about coming together in small groups of people. There's been some good research on group dynamics and looking into things like sociocracy and holacracy, and how groups of 7 to 8 people seem to be ideal for working on different projects. And so the argument is basically, if you have too many people in a group, then things can get a little bit too diffused and maybe just scattered. But then if you only have a couple of people, it can be harder to get some projects done and some goals done. So we encourage people to use the website. The website operates just like a social network. You can go there, you can sign up. You would go ahead and put what skills you have to offer, research, etc., what things you're interested in learning. And then the main aspect of it is we have a map on the website where when people sign up, you can add yourself to the map, and then you can search and look in your area 5, 10, 15, 20 miles and see where people are located near you. You can create circles or cells, and same thing. And the goal is to connect digitally, but then of course for real world action, for people to start meeting with their neighbors, their friends, and their communities, and to start building these decentralized groups of 7 to 8 people that could be used in any number of ways. I mean, that's basically what it is. But of course, after that, being a decentralized concept, it's up to people to decide how they use it. So as an example, we have some people who maybe are parents, and so they come together with 6 or 7 other parents, and they start a freedom cell that's based about peaceful parenting techniques and homeschooling and unschooling, and kind of sharing that knowledge. Maybe there's a group that's more focused on permaculture and learning that. So they all decide, well, let's learn about permaculture, let's educate each other, and let's share that knowledge. The goal being that rather than there being one centralized figure, that the knowledge and the skills are all diffused and within that group. And it's also something I've promoted more in practical ways for, just being prepared for emergencies. For example, I've done a number of videos on freedom cells applied to dealing with weather emergencies, dealing with pandemics, dealing with, say, violent people in your community. And then, of course, when it comes to activism, or what I call holistic activism. And so when it comes to 5G, for example, we've basically got a freedom cell on the line right here. Of course, we're spread out in different parts of the world and different parts of the country. The goal is always to get as local as possible. So maybe you start with your 4 or 5, 6 friends that you have that are paying attention to this summit, or that are paying attention to 5G in general. You guys come together to share knowledge about what information you want to focus on educating. Or maybe you all decide, hey, we need to really learn about this notice of liability. Let's educate each other on that. Let's all file our own notices. And so it's sort of a way to create these teams that can come together and do more than we can as individuals. And of course, the larger goal is that as we create these decentralized groups, these individual cells, maybe we have one over here on the north side of Houston where I'm based, but then there's another group down south, 45 minutes away. They start a local group. And then it comes to bigger actions where we're like, this is the week we need to go to city council to speak to our local officials about 5G. So we all come together and focus on that larger task together. So that's kind of what the concept has been promoted as. I've been promoting it since 2016. And really, it's been awesome because since everything has happened the last few months that has been going on, the website has been exploding. We have now, I think, 3,000 people that have signed up from all over the world. When you go look at the map, we've got people in Africa, Australia, Germany, all over the Europe and UK, and the Americas as well. And so it's really a growing concept. And I mean, my role, I guess, has just been to promote it as much as possible, and to tell people it's decentralized, make of it what you will. So if your group is going to focus on 5G, then that's great. If your group is going to focus more on sustainability and learning how to garden and grow your own food, that's also valuable as well. I think a freedom cell could be taking all of these different tasks, maybe different things at different times. So I've been really trying to promote it lately because people are obviously concerned. Arthur was explaining just the kind of the severity of the situation and the timeliness that we're dealing with right now, that there's a lot of situations related to 5G, not to mention the other things going on, that some of us are feeling that time crunch. So I believe more people are open to and actively looking for solutions, and they seem to see freedom cells as one of those potential solutions. So I'm just hoping that anybody who feels a little bit hopeless, or maybe feels like, as I have the last couple of years, that going to the elected representatives, because some of you may know I ran for mayor of Houston on a platform to put a moratorium on 5G. I brought 5G to all the local news stations and made it a topic in the mayoral race. But even then, I got to see directly just how deep the corruption goes and how much the local government is tied to the wireless industry. And so some people come away feeling maybe like that's not the route they want to take. I'm just trying to offer another route. But at the same time, freedom cells could equally be used in a political way. It could be used as let's get our group together and we all write letters to our officials, or we all go to city council or whatever. So it's a concept that really depends on the people who get involved, what their interests are, what their environment is, and what their goals are.
Excellent, Derek. Thank you for that really good overview. And freedomcells.org, right? Was the site that we saw, freedomcells.org. Yep. And so you have another website, The Conscious Resistance, as well.
Yeah, theconsciousresistance.com. If anybody wants to see my documentary, The 5G Trojan Horse, it's available for free there.
So Freedom Cells, everyone go to that website, get engaged if you resonate with anything that Derek said, which I would assume that most of you did, because it's just another way to find tribe. That theme, I don't know about everyone on this call, but I'm astounded at how people are finding each other now. And there's kind of amorphic field effect happening, I think, that is guided, my personal philosophy now, from a higher intelligence, from our soul, from our spirit, from the higher jurisdictions of our being. So engage that, especially in this time where I know many of you out there are feeling like you don't have community, or your community's online or virtual, or we've been locked in our houses, for the most part for 3 months. So freedomcells.org, again, solutionsforhumanity.net, and get connected with the 5G Action Group. So next up is Dr. Rashid Buttar. And Dr. Buttar, thank you so much for being on this call once again. You're going to talk about medical freedom, freedom of choice, what you're doing, how you're working behind the scenes. Share with us what you can, and share with us what's been announced. And with regards to specifically the super PAC that has been developed.
Sure. I'm going to talk a little bit about immunity first, Josh, because I think that's the most important thing from my perspective as a physician. I'm not a politician, so I'm going to talk about the super PAC because I'm involved with that from an inception standpoint, from a strategy standpoint. But did you get my message, Josh? There's a couple of slides. I didn't know whether you got it. If you can, if not, it's not a big deal. But I wanted to kind of mention what Lena had mentioned. She said that you don't have to get to a 60 gigahertz wave frequency. The studies have been shown at 1.8 gigahertz. They are significant types of oncogenic processes that begin, including adrenal carcinomas, the carcinomas of the neurological system, cardiac cancers, which are extremely rare. I mean, I've been taking care of cancer patients from 93 different countries for the last 29 years, and I can tell you that I've only seen one case of a cardiac cancer. It's just not something that you typically see. But at 1.8 gigahertz, the oncogenic process has just run rampant. And in the mouse and rat model, they saw rampant cardiac carcinomas forming. So that's the first thing. The part that Magda talked about with the voltage-gated calcium channels, that's a very, very big thing. The disruption of the transportation across the cell membrane is a massive issue. And especially when you start talking about the COVID aspect, COVID-19 is an enveloped virus. And basically it allows for permeability of any enveloped virus, but it's not just enveloped viruses. So the voltage-gated calcium channels also, as you mentioned, Magda, you talked about the efflux of calcium. The intracellular efflux of calcium is consistent with suppression of apoptosis and uncontrolled cellular proliferation, which is the oncogenic process, which is cancer. So many of the things that people are talking about with the symptomologies, with the things that Crystal mentioned, which are obviously very disturbing, that's the superficial aspect. Obviously, if a person's not sleeping well, if a person's getting headaches, if a person is having a sense of well-being that's dropped off, these are all issues that are problematic, no doubt about it. But it's the sequela that we're talking about that's going to end up creating massive, massive issues from the oncogenic process. Already, if you look at the data from the National Cancer Institute and the American Cancer Society, and this is data from 2000 and 2001, one out of every two Americans and one out of two North Americans and one out of every three, that's one out of two every North American men and one out of every three North American women at some point in their life will have to hear the words, "I'm sorry, but you have cancer." And that's 19 to 20 years data. That's how old this data is. Now we talk about the modern components that have been added onto this. And then of course, with the electromagnetic radio frequency fields, it's just beyond comprehension what it could do with the problem with cancer. So it would essentially take it to the level of every person having multiple cancers throughout their lifetime and experiencing it. And that's just the superficial aspect. The rest of the sequela, we have no idea what the implications are. We don't know how the human system, or the biological system, I should say, because it's not going to just affect humans, it's going to affect animals, everything. We have no idea what the impact on life will be. And what Dr. Furstenberg mentioned, 3 months, 6 months, that's very disturbing. But I can tell you from a medical standpoint, we're not even talking about the people that are just sensitive to these radio frequency electromagnetic fields that we're talking about. There's so much other dirty energy and so many other different aspects of this. But anyway, I just wanted to mention what happens to the physiological system. So the dissociation between the dissociation of the iron from hemoglobin. This was a great.
Do you want to touch? Is this the right slide?
That is the right slide, exactly. So the aspect of how some of this altitude sickness that people have been talking about, the hypoxic type injury that has been related with COVID-19. You know, to be clear, there's nothing to do, there's no relationship between 5G and COVID-19. However, 5G renders a system susceptible and more susceptible to opportunistic infections, any type of infection. That means not just COVID, but any type of virus, any type of bacteria, spirochete, mycoplasma, yeast, fungi, parasite, whatever the case is. But this particular graph is very instrumental in helping to explain why we're observing that some of these younger people that are, especially in New York, that had this injury that has been attributed unfairly and incorrectly to COVID-19 is actually more related to the effects of 5G, things similar to, at least more advanced than what Crystal had talked about, but similar to that process. It starts with that process, and with ongoing exposure will then result in this hypoxic type injury. At least this is one possibility, and the disassociation of the iron from the hemoglobin, thus making the hemoglobin incapable of carrying the oxygen, which would explain why these people are experiencing a hypoxic type injury, which is not correctable. In fact, if anything, is made worse with intubation, with any type of invasive process. And so bypassing things such as CPAP and BPAP, and then putting a tube down their throat and having an invasive way of trying to stabilize their airway, that's one reason it shows that this doesn't work. So if you go back one slide, I'm going to go to the medical freedom component now. Arthur, you mentioned getting this information to Elon Musk, and that you felt that he wasn't aware of it. This link, it's important that you don't put www there, because if you do that, you're not going to be able to get there. So you have to have it without the www. But if you go to medicalfreedompack.com/DRB, then that third image that Josh pulled up, you'll be able to get that report for free. So Josh, if you just go back for one slide, it'll help to explain it, if you could. If that image that we showed is a report, if you go back right here, yeah, this one right here, the being trampled, that being trampled report. Josh, just go back, go forward one, and one of that right there. This being trampled report, if you type in that link, you'll get this free if you register at the site, at the Medical Freedom PAC. PAC stands for Political Action Committee. So this is actually going to be a super PAC. And when Arthur, you mentioned that you didn't think Elon Musk knew about this, for me, it's hard to believe that somebody that's brilliant doesn't know about some of these implications, kind of going back to what Lena had said. However, assuming that that's correct, there are powers that be that are very interested in doing the right thing. For example, the super PAC has been put together with some key people, including an advisor and long-term business partner of the president, and some other family members of the president being aware and helping to facilitate the super PAC. And the super PAC's mission essentially is very simple. If you are for medical freedom, not health freedom, this is very important to distinguish between medical freedom and health freedom. Health freedom, there's many movements and many organizations have talked about health freedom, but here's the thing: when mandated vaccines come down the pipeline, or when other types of things end up coming down the pipeline, such as having to be forced to have chemotherapy for a child who the parents don't want to have chemotherapy, but the medical system feels, or the physicians feel that the medical system necessitates overriding the parent's right and the child will get chemotherapy. Suddenly health freedom means nothing, because it does not fall underneath the auspices of medical freedom. So I'm not familiar with anybody that's doing Reiki or that's doing healing touch or something like that that's in jail, but there are many doctors that are put in jail because of their choices of how they practice medicine. And so medical freedom is the reason that we use this particular terminology, because medical freedom not only encompasses health freedom, but also the part where an individual has the right over their own body. Medical freedom meaning that they can choose the medicines that they take into their bodies, the food that they take into the bodies, as Thomas Jefferson had said 250 years ago, because those who allow a government to dictate the foods to put in their mouths and the medicines they take into the bodies will soon live in the same sorry state as those who live under tyranny. Now, the mission behind this is a quote from Dr. Rush, who was the only member of the delegate that signed the independence, the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence. And he was a physician, he was the only physician. And he said, unless we put medical freedom into the Constitution, the time will come when medicine will organize into an undercover dictatorship, which is exactly what's happened. To restrict the art of healing to one class of men and deny equal privileges to others will constitute the Bastille of medical science. and all such laws are un-American and despotic. He went on to say that medical freedom should have the same privilege as religious freedom, and that's what we have created, the Medical Freedom PAC, to organize basically anybody that believes in medical freedom and religious freedom. Our message to politicians is that if you stand for medical freedom and religious freedom, we will support you and we will help you get elected. And that the same message goes out to those who are not going to stand up for medical freedom. If you're a politician and you don't stand for medical freedom, i.e. the Shifts of the world and some of these other people, we will do everything in our power to make sure that you never get elected and that hopefully you never see the light of day. So it's a very, very simple statement. It goes into a lot more elaborate components. There are some very powerful people and organizations that are behind this. And the Medical Freedom PAC's goal is to help us get elected officials into office that actually understand these things, so that what Arthur said, that people don't know what's going on, or that the Elon Musks don't know what's going on, which again, for me, it's hard to believe. You know, when I look at Gates and people say, oh, he's such a humanitarian and he's a philanthropist. Well, he's doing this all under the purposes of eugenics. I don't want to get political, but you know, he's in all these different countries and giving vaccines and polio vaccines and this and that. And yet he knows exactly what he's doing. So I hope that what you said, Arthur, that you know, Elon Musk is not aware of it, may be true, may not be true, but I can tell you that certain members of the government are not aware, as Arthur had said. I know that, Josh, you and I had a long discussion about this back and forth. I don't think that a lot of our governmental officials know what the implications are, and it's only because they're relying upon the governmental bodies that have been appointed to safeguard this technology, and they've given a blanket, you know, this is all safe based upon misinformation, based upon studies that have been biased. So I think it is important that we, as an organization, or as organizations, independent organizations with different mission statements, all understand that it's all about getting the right people elected. I think Derek's Freedom Cell thing is a fantastic idea to help people get elected already. How many people saw the video of the Marine, the ex-Marine, who talked through a bullhorn, talked the police down in Sacramento? And then when they showed the video up on top of the Sacramento Capitol, the sniper stood up and saluted. All right, and then everything disbanded. Well, that particular Marine was with Kerry Kasem when they came to visit me in Vegas when I was there filming. They flew in from Los Angeles, and he actually is a doctor of chiropractic medicine, and wants to run for governor of the state of California. And so I had no idea that he was also a healthcare provider and that he was also interested in getting elected, but I just knew him as a retired Marine. So there are a lot of people like us that are activists or that may not be activists, but want to do the right thing and that want to get elected. And why should we have these idiots up there that don't know the difference between their, you know, one part of their anatomy and a hole in the ground? Why should we have these people being elected to represent us when they're people that truly want to do the right thing? They have no interest in a political office. I've already been tapped twice now for something, if depending on who gets elected next year. And I've said I have no interest in those positions. And then I've been threatened by my own friends saying that if you don't take one of those positions, I'm going to punch you in the head before you have a chance to respond to me. But you know, there's an opportunity for all of us to be able to have influence over those people that are either elected now or to be those elected officials, so we can make the right decisions. So again, Josh, as everybody said, thank you for putting this together. And that particular link will get you that PDF, and anything else that I can do, facilitate or help anybody on here, I'll do my best to do so. Thank you,
Buttar. Great. Dr. Buttar, great information. So medicalfreedompact.com/DRB. Now this is, it's kind of like representative of what's happening. There's self-organizing happening, and this isn't a small initiative. This is, people are behind this with millions of people that they reach in their communications. And just to transition now to my co-host, Sayer G. Sayer also is, in addition to greenmedinfo.com, I mean, like pioneering natural remedies and the science behind them, and which ones work and which ones don't according to science, and what symptoms. You have founded, or we're one of the people behind Stand for Health Freedom, and you've already had tremendous results in protecting people's rights, you know, the choice in terms of vaccine safety, vaccine rights, and choice. I wanted just to ask you, first of all, if you want to share about Stand for Health Freedom, and second of all, maybe I'll wait until you share about Stand for Health Freedom, because I want to make sure you get that in there. But I do have a follow-up question on a different topic, please.
Thanks, Josh. And you know, it's interesting because Stand for Health Freedom is a 501c4 nonprofit that was inspired by your discovery, Josh, of some pretty amazing software that we're using for the summit, which is enabling people to just draw up their local representatives and take a quick action and really have an impact versus, maybe being a mouse warrior and just signing a petition or social media sharing, which is important. But, you've helped us all, better understand how to engage and have an impact with the information. So anyway, the 501c4 stand for healthfreedom.com, and like the amazing work everyone's doing here, it's just one of many of the ways through this ecosystem together that we are really having an impact. So thanks, Josh, for sharing that. And it's right now, we're really looking a lot at HR 666. Yeah. What a poetic name for a bill, because of how that agenda with contact tracing overlaps with what we're seeing with this accelerated 5G overlap. And it may not be clear on the surface, but, ultimately, under the auspices of an extremely unique and lethal virus, right, which has been proven to not be lethal in the way that the WHO and other organizations were saying at the outset, right? From 15% case fatality rate estimate down to 0.1% from Dr. Fauci himself now. Yeah. We're starting to understand that what is the agenda behind this? Well, one of them is
that's what my second question was. So please go ahead. And I just want to jump in there really quick and say, like, this is a little bit branching out. It's not specifically on 5G, but there is so much research that is available that is indicating that these various pieces do connect, right? There does seem to be a globalist elite agenda based upon biometrics, right? Tracking. And it's been admitted by some of these leaders and so-called leaders, and it does connect to 5G. It does connect to contact tracing. Contact tracing doesn't happen without 5G, right? Having that level of granularity of ubiquitous wireless coverage with all these satellites. And what? And tell us some of your connections there. I'm getting ahead of myself, and I always kind of get excited when we talk about this stuff, but please go ahead.
Yeah, I think what I've observed is there's a compartmentalization generally in advocacies. For many years, I've been focusing on raising awareness around the true unintended adverse effects of vaccination and, informed consent and basic advocacies. And what I found is some of the activists in that space don't want to talk about, GMOs, or they don't want to talk about 5G. And as you've seen, I think all of us globally have seen a sort of psychological operation around not being able to mention 5G in relation to COVID. Yeah. And that's been very interesting to watch. And I think the reason why you can't speak to it, it's like the quote around, you can't, if you want to know who rules over you, then, just see who you can't criticize. So I think the linkage is there because the substrate for the total full spectrum dominant surveillance model, which we saw roll out in China, which of course, when you look at the unfolding of this operation starting in China and their draconian response, which was then celebrated by the WHO as the model for the rest of the world. And then you see it roll out in certain states in the US, like California. What we're seeing in schools, for example, is that they're starting to set the framework for what they're going to do with the 5G rollout and implementing the rest of this pandemic, if you will, which is they want to monitor children with devices that are Bluetooth enabled that are high enough resolution where they can determine through AI.
Hello, this is Arthur. I'm going to break in here.
Yeah.
And the reason is I don't want to listen to anything about a plandemic or conspiracies or any of this stuff. And this is exactly why I was hesitant to join this call, because I do not associate myself with any of these kinds of theories.
Okay, thank you for that. I appreciate you sharing that perspective. Now, it's interesting because it does highlight there are two different camps in this movement, right? There are people who want to truth at all costs and connect and kind of look at the research and are willing to kind of go against.
I am a truth teller at all costs, but I am not associated with dividing this world into us and them. And the so-called globalists who want to kill us all. I think that's a bunch of nonsense.
You're interrupting right now, and I didn't use.
And it undermines what we're all doing, and that's why I am about to hang up on this call.
But see, you're doing the very thing you're claiming is being, sort of, what I'm saying is that I wouldn't necessarily use that terminology. And like others, I wouldn't assume, for example, Elon Musk doesn't know the agenda that he's participating in. So there are differences here, and that's okay. I want to tolerate differences of opinion, but I would say
I cannot. I have to maintain my reputation.
Me is really the right approach.
Okay, let's reel it in here. Now let's focus.
I have to maintain my reputation, and I cannot be associated with anything that reeks of quote unquote plandemic.
All right, I hear your perspective, Arthur. I don't personally agree with it, but there are many that do, and I respect where everyone's at. So let's reel this conversation in, and let's go to basically open it up to discussion, kind of bringing it back to a focus on 5G. Okay, so one of the aspects that 5G facilitates, it's not just the health effects, it's contact tracing, right? So I mentioned that briefly. There was actually earlier today, I just want to do a quick share on this, and I want to get your guys' thoughts. Actually, no, you know what? I'm not going to share that specific thing. I'll do that later on as part of an email update. But I just wanted to kind of
think that Sarah should be allowed to finish at least. Everybody else got to say their piece, and Sarah didn't. Yeah,
you know what, Arthur? Yeah, thank you for your patience. I like totally value your perspective, but please, I just invite you to stay on the call, and we're gonna, just dive into Sayer's perspective because he was interrupted, and I want to let him finish. That's a good point.
I think I'm the only person here that represents the military, and I can tell you, I fought for this country, and it was for the freedom of speech. So whether somebody agrees or disagrees, with all respect to Arthur, it doesn't matter. The freedom of speech applies to everybody. So Sarah, please continue.
I appreciate that. And, in respect to your concerns, Arthur, I don't need to use the word plandemic, and it's very charged. So I agree that word probably wasn't the best one, given there's a documentary by that name. And actually, Judy Mikovits, who's on my board on Agreement Info, I actually don't agree with all of her views. So, I don't know that we're actually in such different camps. And I do think this is a good opportunity for us to try to tolerate different views. So what I will say is that all I'm speaking to is that if one looks at the original case fatality estimates that the WHO put out, it was 15% was their estimate of those who were infected would die. At present, Dr. Fauci himself, who published in the New England Journal of Medicine about a month ago, a op-ed, he acknowledged the case fatality rate was at most 0.1%. So that 150-fold difference to me represents how profoundly an agenda was put on the back of what was, basically the reason for them suspending all our civil liberties. So that to me isn't conspiracy. That's just an observation, especially now that the facts are, even the WHO says the case fatality rate's 4%, right? So there's this discrepancy. That's what we're talking about. So why were there all these reports of accelerated installations of 5G, small cell installations, for example? I didn't even believe them when they were first brought up. And in fact, Josh, you brought that up to me. I'm like, you know what? More conspiracy theorist stuff, because I don't see them. And you hear it all the time. It's anecdotal. But in Miami now, downtown, you see all of these installations being put up. And they're even in the suburban area of South Miami. I mean, it's pretty gratuitous. So all I'm pointing out is that based on some of the research that Josh has discovered, schools are starting to implement a system of surveillance of their students in real time that is very similar to what has been rolled out in China. And there are examples in Ohio, for example, that just came up where they're going to basically wear Bluetooth-enabled devices that track them throughout the day. So to me, that helps explain how these two things that appear different, right? Public health crisis called COVID and the 5G agenda are actually very much complementary and may actually be connected directly. If you go to the World Economic Forum website, their COVID action platform focuses heavily on the implementation of 5G. That's not a conspiracy. That's what they're saying they're focusing on. So that's why I think it's important to have an open discussion about topics like this. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. I appreciate that perspective. Yeah, so there's a World Economic Forum link there for anyone who wants it. But this is interesting. It leads into the next question that I had was actually from our audience here. We're going to try to get some questions in. Thank you everyone for your patience and being on the call. We're going to move towards wrapping up in say 20 to 30 minutes if everyone is okay with that. Does that work for all the panelists, 20 to 30 minutes? Okay, good. So the question is this.
I'll have to sign up before then, Josh.
Okay, thanks, Derek. Thank you for that. Some people are skeptical about 5G causing harm. How do you suggest we talk to people in our communities or families to get them on board? Now, some of you on the call even have specific resources to help people do that. I just want to open that up for anyone who wants to contribute.
Real quick, Josh, can I just real quick? Yeah,
Please.
thanks to Josh. He actually encouraged us, Agreement Info, to index all the non-native EMF research we could find. So we have a section called electromagnetic fields. There's over 1,000 studies across, I think, 300 different signals of harm. And some of those, are associated with millimeter wave bands. So that's one resource that exists that you can freely access.
I would like to answer that in the following way, and that is that our main problem is that the public at large does not know that radio waves are dangerous. And until they do, we're not going to stop. 1G, 2G, 3G, 4G, 5G, it's all different names for variations on a theme. It's all killing us. Radio waves are dangerous. This has to become widely known.
Mm-hmm. What's some of resistances, and specifically like tips to overcome those resistances that you all have had as you're sharing about EMF and 5G, even if it's just with a neighbor or a family member or whomever?
Blind trust of the FCC.
Okay.
Hey, Josh, I'll chime in on this for a moment.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, one of the things, look, there is, and I will admit, 20 years ago, I was under the impression that the FCC was protecting us. And then I learned more than I wanted to know. It's going to be, Arthur's right. People do not believe that RF radiation is dangerous. They just don't. And they love their iPhones and they love their iPads. And so it's not going to be easy to convince them. An easier thing to do is to make them aware that when they wake up one morning and find a small cell installed 20 feet outside their 14-year-old daughter's bedroom window, it's much easier to make them aware of the fact that the FCC has no idea what level of radiation it's exposing their children to. Again, make them understand for the first time. The FCC never tests these facilities and never requires the owners to test them. That, in my experience, having spoken to people from across the entire United States who call me up because this has happened, they're shocked to learn that. Then the problem becomes they say, well, I'm going to the press. Well, unfortunately, the press doesn't give us fair play either. And the problem is probably the number one source of advertising for the mainstream media these days, whether it's TV, radio, or advertising, is the wireless industry. So even if someone tests the facility and finds the emissions exceed the levels permitted by the FCC by 400%, try getting a newspaper or a television or a radio to publicize it. They won't.
Yeah.
And that's just reality. That's what I see every day.
Anyone else on that?
Josh, we do it totally differently because we're always at city council meetings, so we never bring up health. But the one thing that we can always talk about is your housing value. Your housing value is proven to go down by 20-30%. Sorry to the doctors if I'm copping out here, but it is a way for them to just realize that there's got to be something here that people won't touch your house. So we've got a perfect example here in Thousand Oaks where a macro tower is going to go up in a $7 million area and they can't sell their houses now. So those are the kind of things that you can at least let people think, well, why is everyone questioning that it can't purely be on aesthetics, right? And the other one that I love to talk about is the 2G. We've had the privilege of working with Dr. Gunnar Hauser, who was part of the firefighters study where he did MRI scans on firefighters who couldn't find fires because the antennas were messing with their neurological circuits. And that was just, when he told me, that was just 2G. So things like that, you can just say it in a loving way and people who want to be awake will question. So that's how we go about it.
Josh, if I can just say one little part, something that I had been made aware of, and I think Arthur touched on it when he talked about the homing pigeons, the data from the 1980s, even into the early 1990s was when they sent out a homing pigeons, 100 homing pigeons, 85 of them would make it to their destination. Only 15 would not make it. And there was attributed to birds of prey, windmills, planes, whatever. And as recently as just 15 years ago, 10 years ago, 2005, 2010 timeframe, that number totally flipped. Of 100 homing pigeons that would go out, only 15 would make it back. 85 would be dead. So that ratio of success versus failure of these homing pigeons making to the destination completely flipped. And of course, we know that what Einstein said about the bee population, when the bee population starts to disappear, the human race has 4 to 5 years left. When we look at the bees and why are they not finding their ways back to their hive, it's actually because of the magnetite. Magnetite is actually found in the beaks of birds, and that's what allows them to find direction. But because of the electromagnetic grids on the planet being disrupted by these radio frequency electromagnetic fields and all the other technologies that are being rolled out, the Earth's magnetic grid is actually now being disrupted. And even now we know that the pulse of the planet is essentially being adjusted. I think, Arthur, you talked about that in your book. But the point coming back with the bees, they couldn't find their way back to the hives because the magnetite in the gastrointestinal system acts as a rotational compass type device to give them direction. And because they can't find their way back to the beehive, because the magnetite is no longer able to overcome the disrupted magnetic fields of the planet, the bees can't orient themselves and thus die before they find their way back to the beehives. So making people aware that it's affecting things such as, the bee population, it's affecting other subtle components. Maybe there's something that's going to affect humans. In fact, with the bee population, think about it, depending on how long it's going to take this technology to roll out and affect human beings. If bees are destroyed, pollination of food is going to be destroyed, so we're going to die of hunger before we're going to die of anything else. But again, the point is, maybe, as Mandy said, talking about other things other than health, talking about how it's affecting, produce, how it's affecting property lines. I think it's a good strategy.
Arthur, did you want to chime in on that?
Yeah, that it is affecting the common person. It's affecting every single human being. That the whole reason that 1 out of every 2 people will get cancer in their lifetime is this soup of radio waves. And the whole reason that so many people are functioning by being on sleeping pills and anti-anxiety meds and antidepressants, it's this soup that we're living in. It's not just the so-called electrically sensitive people that this is affecting,
Arthur,
making sick, killing off. The electrically sensitive people are simply the people who are aware that this is why they're ill. The rest of the population doesn't have a clue.
Can you summarize, Arthur? There's been so much of awareness, thanks to your book and your research around, the EMF and the proliferation of flus. Do you want to give us the 1 to 2 minute summary of that? Like, what does the meta science say on that historically?
Very, very briefly, from studying the literature for several centuries, influenza is not a viral disease, and it's not contagious. It is caused by electromagnetic fields. There is a flu virus that is associated with it that causes respiratory disease in people who have electrical illness, but it is not the cause of the flu. To get into it anymore would take a whole lot longer than 1 or 2 minutes. It's in several chapters of my book.
Yeah, and you talk about how every pandemic, going back to the Spanish flu, right, in 1918.
Well, no, goes back to 1889 with the onset of the beginning of alternating current, which happened very suddenly, just like 5G is being rolled out. Alternating current rolled out with equal rapidity in the year 1889, and that is the first year that we had an annual epidemic of flu, and we've had it. It's coming back every year since 1889, and it did not exist except sporadically every couple of years, every few decades. 1889, the magnetosphere on the Earth was affected by this massive amount of AC harmonics that got into the electromagnetic environment of the Earth. 1918, it was radio waves. In 1957, it was radar. In 1968, it was communication satellites.
Yeah.
Hey, Josh, can I chime in with something that's just very practical for
Please.
people to raise awareness with the audience and those of the loved ones. And it's actually very crucial that they start getting these devices, is because of the increasing electromagnetic waves that's happening within their homes as well as on their streets and neighborhoods because of the rollout of the 5G and 4G. We really should say 5G, 4G, because the small cells doesn't necessarily need to be 5G. Okay, so anyways, it's just simply get an RF meter. There's sound features, there's light features, there's graphs, there's the Acousticom too, which is a sound type meter. You can hear the electromagnetic waves, and when you hear it, it's a cacophony of noise, and that's what your cells receive. You can't hear it with your ears, but when you turn on that machine, the RF will translate it into something audible, and that is what your cells are receiving. It's just a mess of frequencies that's hitting your cells at the DNA level, mitochondrial, cellular, tissue, the whole system. And also helping to raise awareness is, once they have these RF meters, check their bedrooms, check their living areas where they spend most of the time, and then start shutting off the wireless components, turning the Bluetooth off, start using the Ethernet wires, start reducing the EMFs in their homes right now. Okay, so that would also help them have a before and after awareness. And again, this is seeing is believing, hearing is believing. So these are very practical solutions. They're cheap. You can buy these on Amazon, $180 or $200 meters. Save your life. I did the blood study of the teacher, so because it's so graphic. It's before and after. It's, again, seeing is believing. These are very, very simple, practical needs that people need to have right now. You may not necessarily pick up the millimeter waves, but that's okay. The millimeter waves need the lower frequencies, such as the 6 gigahertz and below. It needs those to operate, because the millimeter waves, as soon as you have a wall, it'll block it. So again, it's just a synergistic way the technology works. So it's still important to be able to get these type of devices.
Yeah, thank you.
RF meter. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for that. That's really important. One of the questions was, what is the best strategy to reduce your exposure if you live in an apartment and cannot control the EMFs that surround you? While this call specifically isn't focusing on EMF mitigation, Brian Hoyer in our solutions course does focus on that. So I encourage you to check that out. But I just want to open up that conversation really quickly. Magda, what would you say, or anyone else, what would you say on if you live in an apartment and there's all these EMFs around you, people are just becoming aware about EMFs and 5G. What do you do pragmatically?
Well, initially, what you need to do if you're going to be in a multi-unit dwelling, for example, is to minimize anything you're generating. Convert from a cordless phone to a corded phone. Get rid of your Wi-Fi. Use Ethernet or power line adapters. The next thing you have to do is, and I agree with Lena about buying a meter and measuring your exposure. That's the best way for us to learn about anything. There's paint available. There's wallpaper available. There's mesh, silver mesh shielding that's available. So you can actually produce the equivalent of a Faraday cage for yourself to minimize your exposure. There's film you can put on your windows that will block the radio frequency radiation by about 80 to 90%. If you have EEE glass, that will actually reduce your exposure considerably. So there's a lot of things that you can do to protect your home. However, the most important thing is, if you decide to use the silver mesh material that has cotton wrapped around it, and if you use it as you can use it as curtains, you can also make a canopy around your bed. And if you do that, you have to cover the top, the sides, and the bottom. And if there's a little hole in that, if there's a little gap, that radio frequency will come into that protection that you've set up and actually increase your exposure. So having that meter is absolutely vital to make sure that when you think you're protecting yourself, you really are protecting yourself. There's also filters you can put on your power line to clean up the dirty electricity, which is not something we've really talked about very much, but it's part of the electrosmog problem, having dirty electricity flowing along your wires. You're on mute, Josh.
There I am. Okay, thank you for that. I wanted to get back with you, Andrew, and just ask you, shifting now to give us some case studies, some case examples of how you got a call from someone saying, I just realized there's a wireless transmitter or 5G or small cell, and then you were able to work with them. Give us some examples, because I think at this point in the conversation, we need to open back up those solutions pathways that, you know, we are tapping into here. You're muted too. There you go. Okay, there you go.
I've handled over 7,000 cases, Josh. I can't describe all the circumstances. Perhaps what might be better served the people watching this is let them ask questions of the panel. And listen to them. There are lots of things. I mean, if you're these apartment scenarios, when you're talking about the radiation emanating into the apartment, my first question is, where's it coming from? Yes, Magda's entirely correct. You're generating some yourself from your own use. But my first question is, are you on the top floor of a co-op or a condo and there's a macro antenna right outside your apartment? Because if that's the case, you have to do something about that. And there are ways to do things about that. There are challenges you can raise, whether it's because it's in a common area, maybe it is. And yes, you should get an RF meter, no question about it. Test the RF radiation inside your bedroom. I've had cases where, I had one case in New York where a college professor, after a facility was activated, he went deaf in one ear, 2 weeks, literally 2 weeks later. He brought an RF engineer into his apartment. They tested the radiation level, and he found the radiation level in his apartment, and more specifically in his bedroom, exceeded the FCC's limits by 1,700%. So look, there's lots that could be done, but I'd rather just answer questions. So if you have viewers who want questions on solutions to issues they're facing, I'd rather do it that way, because I can't explain what I've done in 7,000 cases.
Thank you. That's really good. We do have, just to break in here, below the embed on the 5gsummit.com/livestream, ask questions there. We have one or two helpers looking for picking out the best questions there. So please go ahead and do that. Yeah, go ahead, Dr. Buttar.
So I just wanted to mention something that Lena had brought up in Magda too. There are technologies, I shared this with you a little bit, and some of these technologies are being developed. Some of these have been developed. They are ways of actually measuring the radio frequency, as has already been mentioned, and taking a smart meter device, putting a plant near it, within 3 or 4 days, the plant dying, and then putting this technology next to another plant in the same field, in the same room, same everything, same proximity to smart meter, within 3 or 4 days, the plant not dying, and in fact, growing and thriving and growing towards a smart meter. And when you measure the output of the electromagnetic radio frequency field that's being generated, it's exactly the same output. There's no difference in output, but one is cell destructive and one is cell resonant. And so how is it becoming cell resonant? With some of these technologies that can take the morphological structure of whatever this energetic field is and cleaning it up and making it more cell resonant. So there are things out there on the pipeline that are being developed and or are developed that have a great potential. I've been working on this myself for almost 2 years now with a partner, and we're not ready to roll it out yet, but we have about 100 devices out there that we've been studying with a group of people and seeing the effect of it. So, all is not lost. It's, there's ways. We may not be able to stop this, but we can maybe protect ourselves. At least, it's obviously going to be much more instrumental to stop it from rolling out. But I think that ship may have already been sailed, just because we've got 420 satellites already up there now.
Dr. Buttar, I love the work you do, but I have to respectfully disagree here. Our organization, and I can talk for Andrew and Lena too, we're on the defensive here, and we have the law behind us. It's just people haven't woken up to their rights. And I love what you said, Lena, it's their inheritance. And there are so many ways that these people are overstepping their rights, because they are dealing with people who haven't gone back to, as Andrew mentioned 100 times, the TCA of 1996. I mean, the local authority is in their hands. We have a city that's actually suing the city council people, and the judge has sent us back to say how many times have these city council people said their hands are tied, because their hands are not tied. We've got another city that's going to investigate fraud because these people are lying. So I love that you say that people have to actually go. I never thought this would be politics, but we had 2 people run for offices. One was a Republican and one was a Democrat, because that's what it's about. It's about standing up for the people. And sorry, I just had to let you know.
Mandy, I just want to follow up on that. Now you sent me a list of like a one-pager point form of local successes across the country, right? That was a few weeks ago. So you have, I mean, there was a couple dozen in there. Victories
we've
and
got
successes at the local
and that
level.
needs to be updated. And one of them was one of the strongest ordinances, and I've read a lot of ordinances written by Andrew Campanelli here in Calabasas. But you know, truth be told, if we have to work hand in glove, because if the people aren't woken up to actually speak and make their city council people, and exactly what Dr. Batar said, if you are not running for us, we're going to vote you out. And so we do have people running for city council. There is an agenda here. I hate to say it too. I mean, I'm sorry, maybe that's the wrong word to be used, but unfortunately, the industry knows that we're ignorant. They know that we're not trying to read the original law. I mean, don't let me get started about how we're not allowed to talk about health in inverted commas. I mean, that's not health, it's environment. Okay, so we're not going to get into that. They're just issues here. And yeah, we've got cease and desists. We've led from a cease and desist to an injunction. We've got ADA claims, which I still maintain are the best way to go. Even through COVID, we've gotten city councils to declare that telecoms are not essential services and they need to shut down their applications for 30 days. You can get incomplete applications, zoning, MLAs. I mean, Andrew knows better than me, but yeah, lots of cities with lots of success.
Frank, I just want to jump to you here in Canada. What are you seeing in terms of where the fight is currently at, what the strategy is, and how citizens or Canadians for Safe Technology is currently engaging, and what your vision is for safe technology in Canada?
Well, typically the Canadian legislators or government will follow the lead of what's going on in the US. So unfortunately, as the FCC is getting more and more aggressive, we're finding our Industry Canada group just trying to follow their lead. And Andrew, I was going to ask you offline, I'm not aware of anybody who has the expertise from a legal standpoint in the Canadian system, because I've met with counselors across the country that are parroting what Mandy, what you're seeing, and Andrew, what you're hearing, that, you know, we don't have any rights, we don't have any freedom. So we are getting some success at the ground level, but it's more by really stalling the process. The way the tool that the local governments can use is they can actually just slow down the implementation of the antennas and allow, and the industry doesn't like that. They're on this rapid pace. We have about 750,000 antennas in Canada, and estimates are there will be at least 2 or 3 times that amount needed for 5G. So they're on this pace that they need to get these small cell antennas installed as quickly as possible. So any town or municipality that gets in the way of that and slows the process down, they may move on. We've actually been successful in getting some negotiation in some cases with some of our national providers where they will actually move larger antennas, not necessarily the small ones. So unfortunately, we're even behind what you're doing, Mandy. I'm loved at what you're doing in terms of your group and your organization, where we've got a small group in Quebec that are doing that. They're called Stop 5. Well, it's in French, Stop 5G. And so they've had ordinances done, or bylaws we call them here, in a half a dozen different cities. So we're behind what you're doing, but our industry is certainly taking it as aggressive a stance.
And Frank, that's where I'd love just to say, by all means, use our platform, because it's safe and secure, and we've got the legal documents up there. You just have to get your lawyers to tweak it in Canada.
No, you're right. That's what we need to do. Josh, I want to make a statement, and I don't want to get into this freedom of information and all that, but I want to just make sure that everybody understands we need to be very, very careful with our strategy on dealing with this issue. Let me give you 2 examples. We have our national newspaper and the BBC that issued a report that what they do is they link the argument that says advocates are saying 5G and COVID are connected. And then in the next statement, they say they also claim that there's health effects from 5G. And the more vocal we are about that, the more ammunition we're giving the industry to go back and plant these kinds of reports. So I think we need to be very careful as people advocating for this issue to say, look, and I think Dr. Havas said it very, very clearly, there is some preliminary data to say there may be a connection. And the science then has to go do their work. And what scientists do is they debate very aggressively and very openly. Is there a connection? Is there not a connection? Is it immune system related? It may in fact be. But we as the people who are out there on the front lines who are advocating or activating or socialists or socializing, I guess is the right word, we have to be the ones that say, look, until the peer-reviewed published data is out there, we have to be careful not to make that connection. And Sarah, with all due respect, I think there may be something going on at a macro level, but please, let's not give the industry the ammunition that just allows them to just dismiss us.
Well, I think, look, this is very, very simple. To say that 5G and COVID are connected, there's no connection. But to say that 5G doesn't decrease the immune system, and if your immune system is susceptible to everything and COVID is part of that, that's just ignoring the fact. And that's not making a correlation. That's just a simple fact.
It may be a simple fact. All I'm saying to you is then you're just handing that platform to allow the industry to go in who outmaneuver us by 1,000 to 1 to go in. They have people, I've done this. I have full-time people on my staff whose only job was to place publications in the newspapers and the media and get it done. And so now
I have to also agree with we've had tens of thousands of peer review studies. We have declassified military studies from low to millimeter waves that all of these have negative effects. So to say that the peer reviewed is still out there, we still need to wait for the science, it's too late. The fact that the FCC is unleashing 3,000 microwave frequencies onto our planet Earth, is that okay? At power levels, at thermal levels, 10 million microwatts over a meter squared?
I'm not saying it's correct. I'm not saying, what I'm saying is, understand what's happening. The industry is taking those little sound bites that we make, such as there may be a connection.
I actually think it's okay. I actually think that them having that argument is okay because they're on the defense. You have to realize,
I think so too.
Speaking on this, they're on the defense.
Go ahead, Arthur.
Yeah, I view my job as to tell the truth, regardless of what anybody thinks, regardless of what the industry thinks, regardless of what my colleagues sometimes think. I'm about telling the truth as I find it, and I think that activists and scientists and doctors for way too long have been afraid to tell the truth because they are afraid of what the industry is going to make of it. The industry will make of it what it wants anyway, regardless of what we do, and we will be all the stronger if we tell the truth as forcefully as we can.
Agreed.
And Arthur, just to piggyback off that.
I just want to jump back to Frank first, really quick. Frank, please.
I'm saying, yes, I agree 100%. We have the data to show that there's harm from 4G technology. And I said,
and from 3G and 2G.
And that's what I said. I said 5G includes all of those harms, plus more harms. We have all the data that we need. We have all the scientific data, the medical data to show that this is a horrible technology and it will kill people. We have everything we need. Going then and adding extra things that do need more scientific proof, I think hurts our case. So I'm saying if it's published, if it's peer reviewed,
okay.
Unfortunately, the way this works, and this is one of the ones, unfortunately, the way this works is the onus is on us to prove it.
What about this, Frank and everyone, if I can just break in here. So here's some really powerful science that's been around for a long time. It's vetted. It's the Bioinitiative report. If you're watching this, bioinitiative.org, excellent site. It has 2,000 studies reviewed and summarized. if you look at the Bioinitiative Report Table of Contents, Section 8 is evidence for effects on immune function. There's two summaries there. One has, I believe, 70, and one has, I believe, 59 studies on EMF and immune system effects. So my question is it not appropriate to really focus on that and to blow that up and to allow people to come to their own conclusions while we focus on the science, on, like Magda was saying and others, there is powerful evidence, and thereby if we inflate and expand that focus, the other, quote unquote, conspiracy theories, whether they're true or not, they diminish, they fall by the wayside. But is that not an appropriate strategy?
Well, I love what Lena said. We have to be on the defensive. Do you know, I've got a
defensive or offensive?
Sorry, offensive, because we've already got an article on our website, and I hate to tell you this because we're going to be branded as terrorists now because we don't want 5G and they need 5G for artificial intelligence. So why do we pander to the media? We need it to be out there. We need people to talk. And yes, unfortunately, the people who don't want to be awake will not join the movement. But the people who have a brain that can question will say, why are they terrorists? Isn't that a freedom? I mean, come on, this is where we're going. This is the US of A. This is why we moved here, for our freedoms. And we're giving them away because we want to pander to the media that's already bought.
I'm not saying that. All I'm saying is we have all the ammunition that we need to prove that the 5G, 4G, 3G are harmful.
Yeah.
Why get into an area that is not as proven as the other? I think it just makes the other science look weaker when we go out and start to try to find other arguments. All I'm saying is we don't need.
What's the argument? It suppresses the immune system, and the immune system is why people get COVID. So what's the argument?
Well,
I don't
you
understand
said yourself, there is no connection between COVID and 5G. You said that yourself, right?
Correct. But there's a different difference.
Unfortunately, what's happening is what the media, certainly in Canada, I'm seeing that in 3 different places now, national media outlets saying the people who are against 5G link it to COVID.
They're going to say whatever they're going to say. They're already saying it. They've already written the articles before they interview you.
We're trying to reach the amount of people that we need to get the next wave of people.
Going for mass, to reach the mass, the mainstream readers.
10,000 people signing petitions to 100,000 people. And these are the people that, you've read the book, you have 7 seconds to make up your mind. People form an opinion in 7 seconds or less, right? So in those 7 seconds, if they see COVID, 5G, and they're the same ones that tell you might get
Frank,
cancer.
Let me respond.
Okay, Dr. Buttar, we hang on. We just need to move towards wrapping up. So please, let's.
Well, I want to hear what he has to
answer Frank's question, if I may. Frank, you said 7 seconds. This is what I've been doing. Why are videos being censored that mention 5G and COVID? That's my 3 seconds question. And I've been asking that. We had a video that went 9.1 million views in 6 days, and it was censored, even though we took the 5G and bleeped it out. It was censored. So the question was, why are they censoring 5G and COVID in the same video? That's a question, and leave it at that. Now let people answer the question. It doesn't matter what the media is saying. It doesn't matter what a narrative is saying. We've had 6 videos that have hit 1 million in less than a day and a half. Just by, I don't even use the word 5G. I think my name, my image with 5G, they censor it automatically. You can say 5G and Mickey Mouse. They're going to censor it if I'm saying it. It has nothing to do with COVID. I'm not kidding you. COVID, they don't censor anything. But I say 5G, it says censored. So the question is, why is 5G being censored? You don't have to say anything more.
I'm not debating that's the way to do it. All I'm saying is that we are viewed as the experts on this. And so people are looking to us. And I think we have, as I said, I'll say it again, we have far more scientific evidence, medical evidence. Why get into this gray area that we don't need to, that is just, in my opinion, may confuse people? That's all I'm asking, saying, I think it's a strategy question that says, look, why not? We have rock solid evidence. Let's stay on a foundation that's made of rock solid evidence, and then go out and advocate that message, and let the industry bring up all the other garbage. I agree with you. Let the industry put them on the defensive and say, the big question is, why are we publishing material? Why isn't the industry proving the technology is safe? Mm-hmm. We do it for pharmaceuticals. We do it in the automobile industry. We do it in the chemical industry. Why is the technology industry?
Frank, you have a point there. That's exactly what the notice of liability is all about. The affidavit is all about the industry proving that it's safe.
Great.
You prove to us a conditional acceptance. It's beautiful. It's like, I will accept your technology if you can prove to me it's not going to surveil me. It's not going to invade my home and trespass and collect data from any of my devices, my cell phone, my Apple Watch, to whatever chips you want to put in, in whomever. It's a conditional acceptance. They have to prove to us that everything is absolutely safe, that it's not going to harm a single cell in your body, period.
I love it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, this has been such a powerful, fruitful call, and I love the tension on here. I actually really like it, and I love everyone's perspective because it takes many parts of the body to make a whole body, right? And you can't all do the same thing, and you can't all see from the same place. So I think one of the things that factors into this is the fact that a lot of these videos with Dr. Buttar, with, even some on this call with Sayer and some of our colleagues are getting millions of views. And so people are waking up, so to speak, and they're gravitating. But at the same time, like you said, Frank, like you said, Arthur, coming back to and Andrew as well, coming back to focus, coming back to what's rock solid and what we can make as credible as possible, while not perhaps watering it down unnecessarily. So I want to thank you all. We won't do the go around and promote your specific sites, but I just want to encourage.
I would like a minute because I didn't get to say a couple of things because I was waiting for the end.
Okay, Arthur, if you can do it in 60 seconds, go.
Yeah, I have 3 websites. One is cellphonetaskforce.org. That's our 501c3 nonprofit. And we are funding 2 lawsuits right now, one in federal court and one in state court in New Mexico. The second website is 5gspaceappeal.org. That's the international appeal to stop 5G on Earth and in space. We have 300,000 signatures from almost every country in the world. And I encourage everybody to sign it if they have not, because if you sign that, you get on my email list to receive my newsletters. And the third website that was recently created is echoearth.org, ECHO Earth. It means End Cell Phones Here on Earth.org, and it has a page to sign that you do not own a cell phone.
Excellent. Thank you, Arthur. And I just wanted to say that you haven't been able to see the stream because you're on phone, but I have been sharing screenshots of everyone's website, including 2 of those 3 that you just mentioned. And to the viewer below this embed, all the speakers are hyperlinked. Please go subscribe to their work, check out their work. We might as well just do this really quickly. Let's just go around the horn, take Arthur's cue. Mandy, tell us quickly.
Let me say one more thing as long as you're doing that. That this threat from space is not the direct radiation on the ground. It's the alteration of the ionosphere, and that the effects will not be gradual.
Thank you. And I just to let you all know in the panel and let all the viewers know, I'm going to be interviewing someone who's going to be going deep into the science on this. And Arthur, I'm going to be, I'll be in touch with you about that going forward. This is very
great. I look forward to it.
Thank you so much for your perspective. Mandy, tell us very quickly, let's aim for as quickly as possible because we're at 2 hours and I'm just so thankful that everyone stayed on the call. Unfortunately, Derek had to go, but please, Mandy, tell us about how viewers can connect with you.
30 seconds. If you have a cell tower that you want to get rid of, go to 5gfree.org and sign up at your local municipality area, and we will help you get it down. Thank you. Thank you for everything you've done, Josh, to unite us.
Thank you, Mandy. Dr. Buttar.
AskDrButtar.com/JDS for Josh Del Sol.
Thank you. Sayer.
Just greenmaninfo.com, our daily newsletters, how you can stay in touch.
Excellent. And Frank?
For the U.S. audience, Environmental Health Trust, so ehtrust.org. For the Canadians out there, it's C4ST.org and /5G appeal, because it's the appeal that we signed with 24 organizations across the country to the federal government, which I'm pretty proud of the work to do that.
Excellent. And you've had, how many people have signed the appeal so far? It's like
we're up over 12,000 now, but that's what I'm saying. We need to get to that next level.
Yeah. So 100, let's get 100,000 Canadians on that. Crystal?
Hey guys, I just want to thank you guys for being here. You can connect with me at Crystal Tini, KrystalTini on Instagram is my platform, and I would love to connect with any of you guys to help further your message.
Thank you, Crystal. And Andrew, thank you so much for staying late. I know it's late where you are.
No problem. Yeah, my law firm's domain address is campanellepc.com. You can also just go into Google and just search Andrew Campanelli Cell Tower, and you can learn whatever you want.
Excellent. Thank you. And Lena?
For the US Notice of Liability version, and there's an also international Notice of Liability version, and also to get my blood work research that's coming out soon on the blood on the school teacher, as well as the backstory of the whole 60 gigahertz connection. Please go to lenasfabulousfrequencies.com. and you should be able to access my Patreon site to access the Notice of Liability documents. Again, it's lenasfabulousfrequencies.com.
Thank you, Lena. And Dr. Havas?
My website is magdahavas.com, and that's for the harmful effects of electromagnetic frequencies, and theroselab.com for the healing effects of frequency therapy.
Beautiful. I'm so privileged just to be, having a conversation with you guys and, spending the evening together, which is what we're doing now after, it's been over 2 hours. But thank you. Thank you to the panel. Thank you to you for watching. Please share this page. We're going to continue to have this video free and available on an ongoing basis. We'll see you at the Encore, the free replay weekend this weekend. And just, be inspired, connect with these leaders, connect with these organizations, and we'll talk again soon. Peace, everyone.
Thank you.